Welcome to Creativity Hive's weekly show. My name is Miriam Haugen. I am part of the Creativity Hive team. We help budding videographers achieve massive post-production skills through one-on-one teaching and live group coaching. And our weekly hangout brings people from across the globe working in various aspects of the video industry. Be sure and leave a comment. Let us know where you're joining us from. Today, we have a really exciting program. We are talking with Dave Helmly, who is Head of Strategic Development at Adobe Professional Video. So I'm going to bring on Dave. So Dave, you need to explain to us, what does this mean? What do you do?
Yeah, it's an interesting title, and it's more for the past 2 years, sort of heading up the strategic development under the cloud umbrella. So we're a team of about 15 people worldwide. I've been at Adobe 25 years, so I kind of done a lot of different things. Always been the video guy. 30-year user of Premiere. I even have a box of Premiere 1.0 sitting on the shelf up there, which was my original box of Premiere, and even the capture card, which was a Supermax Spigot card. So, a lot of us on the team, have various histories, and I'd say various talents for all 15. And we've kind of sort of handpicked these people. We just hired this wonderful lady, Morgan Progrocki, out in Hollywood, for example. She's been in the industry, knows hardware real well, and she just brings an amazing talent. We've hired recently another person, Karina, from the Golden State Warriors. We're really excited to have her on board. She's going to be handling up social media and just kind of digital workflows. And, we've got people all over Europe that specialize in sort of European, pro video and workflows with amazing backgrounds. We even hired a guy. I hired a guy years ago. His name is Van Bedient, who's actually head of strategic development for global. He's taken on the global role now, and he had 16 years at Avid, which is, an amazing feat in itself. He's been in the industry certainly as long as I have, and we always have these very interesting parallel stories and journeys that each of the products have kind of gone through. So that's kind of how our teams put together, and we really just look at the industry, and I'd even say industry trends, to try to figure out what's going to be the next big thing. So that's why we kind of call it strategic development rather than business development. And we try to work with, a lot of large enterprise customers and other customers, just to sort of help them figure out, what's the upcoming technology that's going to give them the most bang for their buck with Creative Cloud, centered around the pro video apps. And we could certainly talk about camera to cloud and other things. I think we can get into that and the significance of that, and even storage. One example would be just strategic development, as I discovered this little company almost 18 months ago called LucidLink. And you guys may be familiar with LucidLink. And I brought that sort of to Adobe's attention, and I just said, hey, this is pretty amazing for remote workflows. Like, you don't have to go full on compute in the cloud when we're just trying to solve the problem. You have a great studio, that you're working in now. You've got your Blackmagic or your AJA hardware connected, and I just need to work this way. But when you start working at a cloud compute, you're kind of using your Mac or your Windows machine as a dumb terminal, going back to those days. So LucidLink was a perfect example of bringing that technology to the customer and saying, here's an alternative workflow. So that's kind of, what the strategic development team does. Kind of a long answer, but we've been around a long time.
Right. I'm going to add in Mo and then Neil too.
Hey, so. David Helmly, the guy from Adobe and Hollywood. But I bet if you stand up and you turn around, your t-shirt's going to turn green and blue, because there's
actually, I will turn around, and I don't know if you guys can see it. Can you see that?
Yeah. Oh, cool.
that actually was a shirt that I had made years really ago, called the Freddie Mercury playback engine. I'll just say no relation to the band. And that happened with some guys on Team Coco, Conan's show. And I'll give a call out to Rob Ash, an amazing guy who they were using this other product that was, I'll just call it FCP7, not the full name. And they decided that they wanted to switch once this newer version came out, and they were kind of bragging about Premiere and our Mercury playback engine, and he called it the Freddie Mercury playback engine when he was doing the take. It's actually pretty hilarious. So we had these shirts made up for one NAB years ago. I actually sent a shirt to Rob to thank him for that. And we were all sitting at a buffet. It's kind of a funny story with this shirt in at the Wynn, just having dinner in all of our red shirts, and people thought we were a band. And then they came up and asked what time we were on. And then somebody in the group and the team, it was like, I don't know, 10 of us said, oh, we're on at 9, right in that center bar out there. It was just hilarious. So anyway, this shirt always brings back great memories. So glad you called
fantastic.
That was unplanned, by the way. It just happened to be the shirt I put on today.
It's fantastic. I mean, it's really good. So you in the fun part of the Adobe camp. Let's put it that way. You're in the Hollywood hills, so to speak, and you know, a lot of people are wondering what is the Hollywood version of Premiere Pro, for lack of a better term. And I've heard a lot of stories around this. You know, David takes out the stuff that's unnecessary, and he leaves the stuff that's workable and doesn't cause issues. And I thought to myself, well, if he's doing it for the Hollywood guys, why is he not doing it for everyone else? And that was a really important question.
Sure.
So I asked Neil, hey, Neil, so Dave's Premiere Pro doesn't crash, right? He says, never. I said, Avatar's never crashes, right? Never. I said, mine is hanging. There's a problem. I need to call Dave. So he says, Dave's not going to do it for you unless you do a feature. So it might sound funny, but it's an important question because, you know, it's great to understand what the workflow process is from your side. Building a custom solution for something like Avatar, because you've worked on a number of very large scale movies from, like you were saying earlier, District 9 and Avatar and Deadpool and so forth. So could you take us through what it actually entails?
So I should correct, I didn't work on District 9, just a buddy of mine was in that. But anyway, on the Hollywood thing, that's a great story, because again, you know, when I joined Adobe, we were certainly less than 1,000 people. I think maybe 600 if you don't include the people that stuffed diskettes and boxes. But and there was a lot of them back then. You know, Premiere, that would have been version probably 4.1, which was done with Video Vision, and I actually came from a company called Radius because we used to make hardware for Premiere specifically and Photoshop. And by the time we, you know, got out to version 6.65, you know, there's all these different changes that you guys might remember. System 7 Savvy on the Mac, System 9, Windows 95, you know, Windows NT. There was just some horrible versions, certainly on the Windows side out there. It didn't get to really steady until Windows 7 or Windows 10. But with all of that, it just wasn't prime ready for Hollywood. Like we knew that when we would get into Hollywood, we had to do this right. And I was actually, you know, in some meetings with some of our seniors and was asking, you know, a lot of questions about this. And we had decided out of that meeting that we need to hire someone from the industry that really knows Hollywood to help us get there. And this can't be a video, you know, nerd, like probably I'll say the three of us, Miriam. I don't want to put you in that category, but I can certainly include you. Feel that you're in there. But you know, the video geeks that we kind of know the hardware. You know, we love sort of playing around. We all do editing, but maybe it's not our lifeblood every day, like a lot of the editors out there. Certainly in Hollywood, and Hollywood is one of these places where there are systems that are set up to say, when you're done with this, you send it across town for audio sweetening, for obviously VFX are all coming in. Because one way to describe Premiere, as we sort of look at the Hollywood and even other workflows, Premiere and InDesign are basically the same concept. If you know our desktop publishing app, you know, these two programs are where everything comes together. So, you know, After Effects is doing its thing. We've got things going on in Photoshop, maybe Maxon, you know, Cinema 4D, all these different things come into the timeline. And then you just kind of put it together and carve it up and export it out. So things need to be ready to handle that. So operating systems were keeping us for a while from getting there. I will give, you know, Apple some credit. It was always pretty pretty great on the Mac, even in the early years, and even now I would say it's neck and neck with Windows. Although M1 is certainly impressing a lot of us right now. I've got a couple of those units here, and they're just amazing. Looking forward to seeing what happens on the Windows side. But anyway, back to Hollywood. On Hollywood, we hired this guy, Mike Canfor. Wonderful guy. He has an Oscar for Titanic and some other amazing films. You can look up Mike on IMDb. I'll say that, working with Mike, he's been on our team for a long time. He would not let us really go after Hollywood until it was ready. And we were talking about Avatar earlier. So, Mike had worked with, James Cameron and John Landau and all those guys, and knew them well. And he was on set because it was actually right around the corner from his house where they were filming it at one of the old Hughes locations. And every frame of Avatar went through Premiere because they were using Premiere back in those days as a utility in Hollywood, because Premiere could do all sorts of crazy things to a frame to prep it to get it ready for Avid. Which of course was edited in. And we actually had John Landau talking about how great the Premiere Pro experience and just Adobe connection was at Adobe Max. So if you guys remember John Landau at Adobe Max, that was our team that set that up. And then that sort of got us into some of these other workflows. We worked with a wonderful studio with Jacob Rosenberg, Scotty Wall, and these guys called Bandito Brothers when they started that. And we had a couple of films that those guys had done. And we worked with, an amazing guy that I just think the world of, Shane Hurlbut. You guys might know Shane. Shane got it. So you can kind of see all these connections that come together that were getting us ready for Hollywood. And as you had said, Mo, we had these special versions, as most companies do, that when you really want to do it right, we're learning about what to do to put that in the next version. So we did that for about 5 years, and we did Deadpool. Our team worked on that. You can see all of our names in those movies. We worked a lot with the Coen brothers and got to learn Hollywood editing versus a very small studio like the Coen brothers in New York City and other places, and got all of those things collected together and put those out. And I would say at about version 13, you just started to watch Premiere Pro on the, let's just call it sort of the post-production, just start to take off. And then with version 14 and 15. So we don't really do what we nickname friends and family builds because, friends of the team, you would sort of get this special build that would take care of the problem. However, the beta program that you guys are aware of for both Premiere, After Effects, and Audition, and our other video apps, come out almost daily, and that is the new friends and family build, because we had decided, look, if we're making these changes, there's so many other people in the forums that we read about. We're like, wow, that would solve that problem if they could just get this build, and it was just not an easy way to distribute it. So, for those people that are, on Creative Cloud, if you just go to Creative Cloud, click on the left-hand side under Beta Apps, you'll see these little blue and white checkerboard versions of Premiere and After Effects, and you can run those betas. So everybody pretty much has access to those betas. And I will normally tell people, if the beta is working for you and it's doing everything you want, don't update it. Just keep going until you read notes that there's something that you're wanting to add. So. In
the After Effects beta, you got multi-core rendering now, which I tested, and I was completely blown away. I could not believe the speed difference it made. It was insane. Premiere Pro's beta, you look at Mogurt's on the timeline. The After Effects engine is running it. It's insane. I never thought I'd see the day a Mogurt kind of renders on the timeline. That
and a Mogurt was only single-threaded, to your point, right?
Yes,
so
it is.
Multi-frame rendering basically gives you multi-core, and having that. It depends on where you are in the cycle of the beta, because we started turning some of that stuff on later. But the intent is to have Mogurt's work using multi-frame rendering on the
it's quite phenomenal, the engineering on the multi-core side, because it was a long time ago. Windows came out, Microsoft came out, hyper-threading technology touted as the next big thing, and it really nobody saw the difference really. And now it's finally come to fruition where that technology has caught up. We've
Yeah.
caught up with the technology and it's caught up with us. So it's pretty interesting times ahead. My one question would be to you, especially because you're at the forefront of this industry in this particular field, is there a particular reason people choose Avid on long form compared to using Premiere as their NLE of choice for long form on series long
I
form?
think that's a great question. So, first of all, I'll just throw out Avid is an amazing partner. I've been working extremely closely with Avid. We meet with them at least once a month, if not twice a month, depending on what we're up to. They have an incredible new panel for Premiere Pro to get it in their UX environment. And it's probably one of the best. I hate to say this for the other MAM vendors because we have just an amazing partner program. But if you look at what Avid's done and you're on Avid, it's one of the most impressive panel integrations. And this is where Avid's kind of living and breathing your MAM inside of Premiere with all sorts of things that you can do. It's worth checking out on their website. So I want to throw that out there because they've made Premiere through our partnership, by the way, which I'll say was customer driven. We had a customer that demanded that this work, and we got our heads together. And uncomfortable meeting. I'll say the first time we got into a conference room in New York City, that all the elites of Avid, and I flew a bunch of our guys out. Again, I'm on the East Coast, so I flew a bunch of the guys out. Our senior VPs and directors and stuff came out for that, and we just netted it out. We're going to do this, this, and this. We worked on AAF. We worked on all these different things to make Premiere Pro a first-class citizen. So definitely check that out. But to your original question, why Avid? I think for one thing, it works. I mean, it's safe. That's the thing, right? It's safe. I've got a copy over there, on the shelf, and they support me real well, and I try to look at it. But it also is a different way of editing. I had one customer tell me it's like taking a shower with a raincoat sometimes after you've used, great programs like Final Cut X or Premiere, right? These programs allow you really to get out there and just go crazy on the timeline. Anything goes. You can throw whatever you want at it. Now, much like Final Cut 7 and Avid, they saw that early on and said, all these codecs are going to get you in trouble. All this audio channelization is going to get you in trouble. So if you lock it down to a ProRes or a DNX and you have a much more controlled edit, and we have to tell people this all the time, especially on long documentaries where they have assets coming in from all over the place. We have to say, you know what? You should really think about converting all your files to ProRes or DNX, two very nicely optimized codecs in Premiere Pro, and again on Mac or Windows for ProRes and DNX. And Premiere, I think, becomes much more buttery, on the timeline as you're scrolling things around, when it doesn't have to switch importers all the time. Remember, when we scrub frames and we do things, it's going to behave a little differently when it hits a different codec. We have to explain customers this all the time. Everything's great when you're coming off that one camera and then you hit the one iPhone file when you're doing a documentary, for example, and all of a sudden it turns into mud. Now we have, as far as stickiness on the timeline, we have improved a ton of that. I mean, we've done a ton of work with Apple around Metal. They've been an amazing partner around this. We've worked with the Microsoft team, with NVIDIA and AMD as well, to try to get, accelerated GPU, just so you kind of maintain that buttery feel on the timeline. And it's light years ahead of where it was. And I don't think this is any different than what you experience, say on Resolve or Final Cut or even Avid. I mean, if you stick to a controlled, predictable codec on long form, and a good friend of mine, Rich Harrington, you guys might know Rich, when he gives this lecture, he's like, you're going to pay the tax at the beginning or at the end if you don't convert your codecs on long form. But as we know, not everything's long form these days. It's very common to see, a major motion picture edited on Avid and those assets brought into Premiere Pro. And then we've got 10 to 1, say 10 people in Premiere versus one Avid, creating all the stuff that is either prepping stuff for the Avid or sending it out on sort of a multi-screen workflow for iPhones or iPads or web, right?
Yeah,
while at the same time, lots of movies being made with Premiere Pro. You look at Terminator, Dark Fate, and a whole bunch of stuff. So I have to say, and we were talking about this earlier, it would be, interesting to see what our uptick is again, because year over year it's been amazing at Sundance to find out how many movies at Sundance are made with Premiere, and I'll just save that for another conversation because it's a shocker. It is in a good way. We're like amazed, but I think people are going to use whatever tool they're going to use, Mo, and Hollywood still has that compartmentalized. VFX are going to go to these 3 houses. This is going to go up to Skywalker Ranch. We've been working a lot with those guys, and even working the Avid relationship, by the way, has got much better Pro Tools integration because they wanted it, we wanted it, customers demanded it. So I think there's ways to have, competition as well as cooperation, right?
Yeah,
I will say we're working surprisingly well together, and that also goes true with Apple. A lot of people, it's funny because I always feel people want or like to see a good fight. It's just like, oh, who's going to duke this out? And it's like, we have to make sure everything works everywhere. Blackmagic, by the way, has done an amazing job with their B-RAW importer and exporter for Premiere Pro. It's fast, it's GPU aware. It's actually so good. We were like, do we really need to create an importer exporter? Because they've already kind of done the job. So, another good partner on the camera side as well. So.
I was going to move
one of the things I will
Germany.
kick in.
I'm sorry, Neil, go ahead. Yeah.
One of the things I'll kick in with right here in regards with Apple and everything, color, of course, being my main thing, is something that drives myself and every colorist I know nuts, and we get on the forum a whole lot, and that is the interesting decision by Apple to do that odd implementation of quasi Rec 709 within their color sync utility, and then people get mad at Premiere Pro or Resolve and don't understand the issue, and those are some of the things where if you guys could get together and sort this out so everybody was on the same page. I mean, like, you want to hear somebody get wound up about this. You just mentioned this around Robbie Carmen.
I know Robbie.
Major
we all
colorist.
live in the same area, by the way.
Whoa, Robbie will just come unglued when you bring this up.
And Robbie's the guy for that. I totally respect his opinion. When he's happy, I think we'll all be happy. But at the same time, and I think Robbie would agree, at least we're at a point now where Apple and even Windows in their OS has HDR as a switch that you can turn on if it detects HDR. And pretty much everything in my office right now is HDR. I've got a HDR a brand new Dell 3222Q display in front of me, which we're testing for Hollywood right now.
You need to show your setup.
Oh, it's a little.
No,
Mo's gonna freak at this.
So, I'm gonna go offline. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I don't know. This computer is asleep over here, but it's never a dull moment. You like my webcam up there too? It's
completely nuts.
It's a nice webcam, but
what is that up there?
That is a Blackmagic Ursa Mini.
I've got a Pocket 4K as my second one over here, and you're running an Ursa Mini.
When you're on the pro video team at Adobe, image is everything.
It is.
And I've got all my ICANN lights set up, so shout out to ICANN if we're doing that. And by the way, it's another just a great way to talk about partnerships in the industry. We all work with each other. We're all kind of in this together. There is competition here and there, of course, but customers almost feel sad if there's not a good fight going on. But we all work together really, really, really well. It's too small of an industry. I think you guys would agree on that. So
well, there's so much that goes back and forth. You talk about all the stuff that goes from Avid into Premiere, and in fact is being worked on at the same time. Well, and of course Resolve is the same way, because there's so much stuff going on, and in fact now with Resolve, with Fusion and going, I know some people are doing where the graphics are now actually over in Resolve, but so they come over to Premiere for some of the editing and some of the other things, and are running Resolve for color and some of the graphics and in these crazy mixed workflows. that can can be a little on the complicated side at one time.
We have to ensure they work, right, Neil? I mean, we have, people want to jump out of Premiere and really go deep, say like Robbie, into resolve color grading, and they need to get back to finish workflows. That needs to work. So we are working certainly with those guys on that. And again, we're doing our best for project interchange with Avid, and sort of get these things figured out, that a Premiere Pro project is really just an Avid bin. And we actually came out with a new, just on the Avid side, what we call productions, which is much more of an Avid type structured workflow, where you have sort of a master project that controls all these Avid bins. But really, when you look at it, it's all these Premiere Pro projects. And most of the stuff we have going on in Hollywood right now is all about locked bin workflows to mimic an Avid, and just getting rave reviews. And by the way, I'll throw call out to Van and our Hollywood team out there that had just done an amazing job. Todd Reeder, Matt Christensen, just a whole bunch of the team out there that really worked a lot with Van, who again came from Avid, and just said, look, this is the way it needs to work. This is the way it needs are going to be expected to work, and we need to fix this behavior, that behavior. And that's how productions came to be, is our strat dev team sort of dictated what that looks like. And that's another thing that we do, is we work extremely closely with engineering on all sorts of features. There's tons of features, in Premiere Pro that I screamed about for years. I'll give you an example. One is, if you didn't know, if you drag a clip into no timeline, a timeline just pops up and just heals itself for you and presents itself with all the right settings. Not a big deal. We all do that, but that took me 5 years to get engineering to even pay attention. Because you might remember in the old days, we had that long list, and you had to kind of pick which one you wanted, and everybody kind of picked DV. So you had all these, all these features. And if you didn't know this, you can be in iTunes and have iTunes open on Mac or Windows and grab any song you want and drag it directly on a timeline. So from one app into Premiere, make sure it's licensed. Want to say that. So it needs to be your own licensed material. But a lot of little things like that we look at. And I'm working on a whole bunch more right now that make life.
Dave, it took about 5 years of my yelling at the engineers at NAB and Max to finally get this nice new RGB curves panel, and it's now in the beta. That's the same rectangular one as the other one, and it is so much easier to use and to make fine adjustments. And I'm just going nuts with it. Of course, we need the little articulated arms that you can use in a lot of other things. So you just click on this, drag out, you get this arm, and you can just use that arm to control the shape of the curve up here. But this is the kind of thing that this is so much more usable for anybody, and I'm just really thrilled that,
while you have that up, or just to talk about it, the color team. So we have these kind of amazing teams, and I can't remember when Patrick Palmer, who's the group product manager that runs a lot of the teams on the engineering, with engineering, I should say. They're working, pretty hard to take our input and customers, and certainly, your input on what needs to come next. You've got the scopes up here, and those are much more high resolution now.
Yeah, the vector scope is just amazing what you can see
now for, Francis Crossman's been working on that. I know you guys know Francis. We really do dig in to a lot of these problems. And that's why you want to play, if you can, with the beta, and it is safe to have it loaded, on the same machine. It won't whack out your existing version. Sometimes you have to make sure that you set your projects to always open with the current version, not the beta. But perfect example. And I will tease it a little bit that the color team is hard at work on a lot of new ideas and a lot of input from customers, because there's just color with Lumetri coming from the SpeedGrade engine, we all know is amazing. It's a very simple interface, obviously not as deep as say SpeedGrade or Resolve was, but a lot of people just need that quick fix to sort of get in there and have a grader behind them, not a color corrector. Because remember, there's color correction, which is kind of old school and busted, I'll say, versus color grading. And as you move dials and knobs in Lumetri, which I think is the sort of the version 2 of that that's out now, where, you know, we have the color wheel that used to go this way, and now the color wheel goes, say, this way. So when you want to, you know, do hue versus hue or hue saturation, it's a much easier model to predict what's going to happen before you sort of make that adjustment. When you color pick in there. But the color team, that team of 10 is really sort of looking at the next evolution of what customers want. So, and there's a ton of work going on around Premiere around that. So lots of stuff.
I think Dave, you used a very important word now, you know, the evolution. I think it's at a point where it's kind of a revolution, because in the last year, I would say there's been a ramp up speed wise in new technology and an acceleration in Adobe's processes, from DVA stuff to Photoshop to, you know, most of the apps. I'm trying to understand, was this in any way due to the M1 architecture? But I doubt it, because there was a lot of ramping up speed-wise before the launch of M1.
Yeah.
Or is there a reason there's been such a radical acceleration?
Yeah, I mean,
progress, you know.
I talked about the teams of 10 that we're really proud of, you know, at Adobe. These are dedicated teams within the video engineering that want just to solve problems, and they pretty much stay in their own lane. And we have a performance team. And when you sort of dedicated people, and this was sort of the bright idea of, you know, Ivo Maniloff, when he came into Adobe, just an amazing guy that heads up engineering. And he was like, look, we need to have more focus on these problems. And of course, he's a big supporter of our Strat Dev team. And performance is one. So, you know, when we had people, we were hiring engineers specifically for GPU. You know, we've hired people from AMD, we've hired people from NVIDIA, Intel, you know, all these places, and even just some really amazing young brains coming in to Adobe that just know math, as I say. Yeah. And we were on a hiring spree like mad to hire these performance. And with M1, it really forced not only us, I'll even say probably the Final Cut team and the Resolve team and even Avid. Remember when they came out with the 8 gig machine? You know, that's not good, right? Like an 8 gig M1, you know, on a long form project with lots of, you know, Red Giant, you know, filters or whatever you want, multiple apps. You're asking a lot to do that. So, you know, M1 is more efficient, but one thing that it got us to do is create these libraries and make them smaller and more efficient. So getting in and doing some recoding and some rethinking about the code bases. And you're already seeing this when you start seeing words like, you know, there's a filter and right next to it, it says deprecated, or it'll have, you know, some other word there that makes you nervous, which we're trying to tell you, you better think about another workflow, because these filters are going to be outdated, because we can't make the performance the way it needs to be on an Apple Silicon, or even what's coming out on say Windows ARM whenever we start going down that path. So I can't quite say, and you guys know me, I'm the performance guy at Adobe. I do, you know, a lot of the testing on the hardware as not my day job, probably my weekend and night job, but I test a lot of hardware and cameras and stuff. And I will say that the M1 running 16 gigs of RAM, and I run a little M1 Mac Mini here. You can't quite say that 16 is the new 32, but 16 on Apple Silicon is more than 16 on an Intel machine, just by what's happening in the machine. So, you know, I do recommend, you know, these little Mac Minis and MacBooks that are out now for editing, because you will see a substantial gain in speed. The only problem, and I ran into this is just people thinking about getting an M1, or maybe you have an M1. I do see weird issues with Thunderbolt, and I'm a huge Thunderbolt guy with Intel. I do lots of talks with Intel on Thunderbolt and panels and stuff. But M1 is finally getting caught up on the driver side, say from a LaCie and other ones where we would do it. There were just, you know, odd issues to get you full throughput. You can usually get it connected and editing's good, but when you start doing speed tests and stuff, the speed is not the same until recently as some of these fixes come. So just keep that in mind. when you're editing on an M1. That's something you want to test out. And if you're not getting, use your AJA or Blackmagic speed test and look at that.
You're a huge advocate for remote workflows. So I've watched you all over LucidLink, right?
It's been the last 2 years of my life, Mo.
Right. I've seen it. I've seen you on shows with Carl Sule and LucidLink and Peter and all the guys. And we got into it pretty early, Neil and I, actually, something you don't know. Or you might have known, is we've been testing LucidLink to hell. What Neil and I do is we get stuff and we try to break it. Yeah. From Premiere, which we broke the team projects completely and utterly. We broke team projects, right?
Yep.
Which forced them to stop it and then redo it, kind of. Let's call it that. To LucidLink. So we've been using it all along. We have a lot of storage. Peter's graciously given us like petabytes.
Yeah, me too.
It's crazy
storage
stuff
over there. Amazing team.
And Neil and I say
it's an amazing process. It's Mo will we'll be on a phone call via WhatsApp, and he's in Cape Town, South Africa. I'm in Western Oregon. We're like you can't hardly get farther apart on the planet. It's like you take a line straight through the planet to get to the other place. So he's in Cape Town. He tells me on the phone that I'm putting a folder of media up on our server. Well, our file space is in London, Amazon S3 servers in London. And within like 3 seconds after he says it, my virtual drive on my machine for LucidLink will show this folder appear. And a few seconds after that, files start appearing in the folder. They haven't even finished uploading from his computer in South Africa yet. I'm seeing the files. And as soon as I see the files, I can open up Premiere, drag and drop the files. Premiere imports them. I can drag and put them on a sequence. They haven't even finished uploading in South Africa, and I am playing them on a sequence in Premiere here in Oregon. It's
hard to get people to really understand what's happening with LucidLink, and I will I'm going to put a link in the chat that a guy that worked for me for a really, really long time, Colin Smith, and I'll throw that in the private chat, Miriam, for you to make sure that works okay for them. And this is just a great chat that Colin Smith and I just go into LucidLink as two longtime buddies, and he's up in Canada, I'm in Maryland, of course, and we just start working on this edit, and you sort of see his expression of what's going on, because I really didn't tease him with it, because I kind of say it's the Ronco set it and forget it of storage, because when you look at this and you start editing with it, it's just a file system on AWS, Microsoft Azure, Wasabi, of course, IBM is a big one for them right now. And it just makes a file system. And it's as little as, I don't know, $12 a month. Say you're a starving editor and you just like, I need something so Mo and I can work on this together. He's my After Effects guy and he's miles away from me. Or, you want to step it up in performance, you can go to IBM. And if you have a relationship with AWS or Microsoft Azure, say a corporate account, I think it's like $30 a month or something. So the pricing is like completely doable. And I would say, do the trial. I'm not personally invested in LucidLink. I just love, and if I can say this, I just love shit that works. I mean, because let's just face it, there's so much tech that's thrown at us all the time that we just don't have time sometimes to deal with it. And again, why we're trying to make Premiere and other apps more predictable as far as where to find stuff, so you don't have to keep going out to Google and keeping YouTube open all the time to figure out what the issues are. So all of these things together, I think LucidLink is a perfect example, as I mentioned early on with our StratDev team, to where I looked at it and said, this solves a ton of problems. And I have been on the lookout for other products that do what they do the way they do it. And they do it, as you know, Mo, with intelligent caching. So you can reserve, say, 10, 15 gigabytes for any typical project. That's usually more than enough. And it will never take more than that. It's usually instantaneous. It is streaming frames down. When you upload stuff to LucidLink, it creates what I kind of envision in my head, Mo, is Minecraft blocks.
Yes, it is.
These blocks are created. So when I'm playing on the timeline, it's just laying down these blocks. And I can stop it. When I move the time marker over to another part of Premiere, downloads those blocks. And if your, connection is, 20 up, 20 down, at least, or higher, you can get a beautiful 1920 1080 playback.
Yeah.
You just put the time marker there and hit play. It'll just start to play.
Just starts to
4K
play.
takes about 100 to get that experience, which in a lot of places is doable. So great example of technology making workflow easier for me on the remote side. And I do live and breathe VDI as well. And I was on the Teradici, beta, which of course Teradici now being acquired by Hewlett Packard on the Mac side. So, having a Mac host somewhere up in your office or in the cloud, being able to have a Mac to Mac workflow is going to get very interesting when they sort of come out.
It's pretty interesting that Adobe acquired or is in the process of acquiring Frame.io. But there hasn't been any talk of Adobe perhaps acquiring or looking at acquiring something as good as LucidLink.
Well,
and it might, I'm trying to understand.
If you look at who's invested in LucidLink,
that's the
you
thing.
might see a familiar logo there.
Yeah.
We, and again, we invest in a lot of technologies and a lot of companies. When I kind of brought this to the attention of the executives in our cloud tech team, I think everybody was kind of blown away at the simplicity and what they're doing. And we have a lot of projects we're working on, internally as well. But I don't think any of them sort of line up the way LucidLink does with the mounted volume on the desktop. And even stuff like Frame.io, who's been a partner of ours since 2015. They're an amazing partner. As you said, we're still in the sort of the due diligence, want to acquire phase. So that's all sitting with Department of Justice right now. But if you know what Frame.io does and you know all the things that we do, it's pretty easy to start connecting some of the what ifs, or wouldn't this be great if I could sort of do it this way? And I think it's going to be really exciting for tools for the new work. And anybody that's been with Adobe or knows Adobe's taglines, that was our tagline, I don't know, probably 15 years ago, tools for the new work. And I think that this is a perfect example. Things like Frame, with the way they do commenting and just the thought process and the UI, beautifully done. Hats off to that team. Again, longtime partner of Adobe. And then people like LucidLink, like you said, that just make it easier. And we haven't even talked about camera to cloud and these new iPhone Pros and ProRes, which I'm so excited to get started with where that's getting us with 5G. That's probably a whole nother hour, Miriam. So.
Yeah,
it is.
We can talk forever here. I want to know the story why you have the two pillows behind you.
Oh, there's three. Oh, that's a good question. So
three. Yeah, you've got.
You see, well, first of all, I'll talk about Photoshop. So when I first started my career with Adobe, I was like the guy that knew how to use, the software coming from Radius, this company I used to work for. And we used to make these photo boosters, which were Photoshop accelerators. And we made tons of graphics cards that people may remember with Radius and SuperMac. And of course, we made Video Vision. So Photoshop would always, when I started working for Adobe, if you wanted to get in to talk about Premiere, you could always get in to say, hey, can I show you what's new with Photoshop? And I'll give you 10 minutes on that and 45 minutes on Premiere. And we did that. We did the same thing with After Effects. I just haven't snagged an After Effects pillow yet. I'll have to do that at Adobe Max, by the way, which is coming up. I'm sure Miriam was going to mention that. We're pretty excited about Adobe Max coming up next month. But on the Premiere side, between Premiere and you also see Acrobat up top. In the early days, when I worked in various groups at Adobe, from the government team to the education team to I was an account manager for many years as well. Trying to convince people, you think it was hard to convince people to use Premiere, for Hollywood editing or long form. Try Acrobat. People could not figure out that printing to the screen was better than printing to a printer. Right? Because that's really all it did. In the old days of Acrobat, we would just say, look, you can look at this, you couldn't open up Word on Windows and Word on a Mac or Linux or any of these other operating systems back then. You were trying to figure out, how do we move these things around? When John Warnock came up with sort of this concept and the Acrobat team, it was pretty amazing to watch what happened. So Photoshop would get me into those Acrobat meetings too. So Premiere and Acrobat, I will always say, much of their success for getting in the early days of Adobe, for just getting meetings to say, want to see what's new in Photoshop? Give me an hour, and then give them 10 minutes on Photoshop and all that, and of course Illustrator and all the other great products we had back then. So that's why those pillows are near and dear to my heart. It reminds me.
So Avatar 2 and 3, right, Dave? 2 and 3, Avatar, being done already. Almost done. A few years in the making, a year or two in delays, COVID, etc.
Yeah.
But it's being shot back to back. It's post-production back to back. There's a lot of hype around what's about to happen. Has Adobe jumped into Pandora's world?
Yeah, I mean, if I'll put it to you this way, if we had, we probably couldn't talk about it anyway, because there are very strict NDAs on a lot of the groups that we work with. But I will say, probably 5 years ago, when that new studio, maybe it was more than that, maybe 6 years ago, when the new studio was built out in Manhattan Beach area, John Landau gave us sort of a personal tour of the space. It is jaw-dropping at what they have there and what we had the opportunity to see even that long ago, for how everything's shot, how it worked, the teams behind it, the technology there is incredible. And again, that was 5-6 years ago when I was on site there, checking that out. And I will say that they have kept a lot of any sort of information about that very, very tight-lipped. I, for one, am extremely excited about it. I think the work that team does is second to none. Probably the best 3D movie I've ever seen, and I do have the 3D version on Blu-ray, and I will throw it in there. And it is, I have a 3D projector and some, I think I have, even my TV over here is the last OLED Dolby Vision TV. I think the only one that LG ever made. And when I throw a Blu-ray on that, it's amazing. And I don't even think streaming anything in 3D still does it justice like a Blu-ray. But and I think those days are long gone, right? Because I used to be. It's funny because I have several 3D cameras. As you guys probably remember, I'm always the guy that gets to play with, here's the GoPro, VR camera. I was the VR guy and all that. But those technologies, kind of come and go. Although the GoPro one is still in use. But with Avatar, who knows? I mean, I'm going to be blown away looking at the actual production workflow when that information comes out.
I think the key phrase early in Dave's answer, Mo, there was something about NDA.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
I don't
want to send you down the wrong path. I'm just saying that, we're working on all sorts of stuff all the time. So
yeah.
and false.
And for the audience that may not know, NDA is a non-disclosure agreement, and those of us in this program are all rather familiar with NDAs and have worked with numerous ones at various times. And so there's things you can, where you get to talk about it later. And of course, some things you work on where, you never get a release. And so it just, you worked on something, but so what? You never talk about it.
Yeah. And I'll whet your appetite, just letting you know, there might be a movie you want to check out, take a look at the credits on a black and white movie coming from one of the brothers in New York. Does that ring a bell?
Okay.
Do you know?
Okay. Yeah.
Stars Denzel Washington. Now, does it ring a bell?
Is it the new Denzel Washington movie?
Yeah, coming out. It
I
was
heard
just
about
screened,
it.
I think, last week. It was done in Premiere Pro. Macbeth. So that was a recent. I mean, there's tons of projects going on all the time. That
when you say done in Premiere Pro,
and it's been shown to at a.
So when you say done by Premiere Pro, do you mean?
I mean, it was edited in Premiere Pro. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what is? Maybe this is under NDA as well, but hopefully not. I'm really dying to ask this question. What footage are you throwing on the Premiere timeline? What is the resolution? Tell me 8K. Tell me 5K. And then I'll say
you'd have to understand how those guys edit. It's a very simple edit, and of course this wasn't the brothers, on this one was just Joel, but they edit when they edit together. If you take Hail Caesar and even the Netflix series that they did, I worked with them. I was in their offices all the time, working on these, and I'm still an advisor to their lead person out there that kind of runs the studio. But when you watch him edit, it is so different than watching, say, Tim's team out at Blur editing on Deadpool, because they will use a keyboard like it's a piano.
Okay.
And, I've been in situations up there working with the Coen brothers, and you try to sort of say, hey, it kind of works. How about this key? And they're like, no, they kind of got their own way of doing it. And there's actually a feature, if you just want to know a little trivia feature, and I'll throw it out to anybody out there. If you're in a workspace and somebody has screwed it up, what do you do to reset it with 2 clicks? And by the way, not hitting a menu, just on screen. How do you and no function keys?
I'm gonna write this thing down,
because they don't want to memorize anything, and they really taught us a different way to edit. How would you reset it? If you would know off the top of your head. So if you've got Premiere open now, change your workspace, then just if you're in editing, for example, just double click on edit. Just go click on editing, just up at the top, right where you see the workspace.
No way.
That's a Coen Brothers feature. They said, why do I have to either go to this menu or define a keyboard shortcut? Can't I just double click on this thing? And we were like, that's a great idea. And engineering actually added that.
You know what, David? You answered
excuse me, Mo. Excuse me. I need to kick in here. David just brought up something that is a real pet peeve of mine in the beta that's released. You said you just go to click on.
I know, because I haven't figured out where it is.
You took that bar off the top, and you can't do that. You now have to go to a menu and then down to it.
I'll tell you why the bar is gone. By the way, I got to figure out how to reset it, because I will be getting a phone call for sure, because I haven't figured that out yet. And it's actually on my list to call engineering, because I know the guy that works on that. But the bar, the area up top, is going to give you lots of cool information about what's going on in the project. And a little sneak will be, wouldn't it be great to know more about what's going on with team projects and other types of things? So we're going to use that top area, which we consider front and center, valuable space, out of the way. Big debate at Adobe on what to do with that. And as we start going into more of a, let's just really start to look at the UI, I have this thing that I call make it more discoverable. Because, I have, friends of Dave have to call me and go, how do I do this thing? And I get WhatsApp, all the time, my buddy Charlto, whoever will say, how do I do this? And I'm like, so why are they calling me? Because you should just be able to find that on the timeline and figure that out. So anyway, just double click on that to do your work. Now, and by the way, I want to say, as Neil said, that goes away in the beta. We will have to come back, Neil, and tell them where it's set in the version, next version.
All right. Wow, this is fantastic.
It's crazy. David, you answered everything in one fell stroke for me when you just said to me, well, you were sitting with some guys that are out of Hollywood, and they asked you a question, why can't we do this? And that's what you do, really.
People want to know what's my job. That's my job. That's
fantastic.
On our team's job.
Miriam, this would have been a 1-minute interview. We just asked David that question right at the beginning. But it is very interesting to understand.
How do we get people to be, and again, I know this is a tough subject, how do you get people to be happy about paying that subscription? We all have subscriptions that we deal with at home. And if we can increase the active use of Premiere to where when those bills come in, whatever it is, they're like, you know what, there's a value there for me, and Adobe's listening to me. That's what we care about. Yes, we want to see, you know, Premiere go from X amount of users to X amount of users, but you also want to maintain the users that you have and keep that active use going and make them happy. It is the Adobe way. How do we connect? By the way, this is a whole nother hour, but Neil, color. How do we make color in Photoshop, Illustrator, After Effects, and Premiere, which all work together the same? And that is something we're working on now. There needs to be unified Adobe color, so I have everything on the screen with display management, and it all looks the same on the same monitor. And that's not true today, unless you know how to get in there and whack it out a little bit. So
that's a pretty interesting job that you have, description. I think it's insanely.
And my title changes all the time. It depends on what my core.
I saw your LinkedIn. Your title it is changed. Yeah. So the person behind Dave, hoping this is not something that keeps you awake 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. There's got to be somebody behind Dave. So when all this is gone, and I know it's fun, you love it. What do you do beside this?
That, you know, it's funny. You know, I probably edit video like you do.
Right.
And by the way, I finished my 25 years at Adobe, so now I get lifetime Creative Cloud, so I can continue editing Premiere in my 90s. So that you are awarded Creative Cloud after 25 years, which I think is hilarious, but I love it. But you know, other than that, I mean, I'm big, you know, big on the environment. You know, we're a full Tesla household. You know, everybody in the house drives a Tesla. I have Tesla solar roof, so I'm very big on a lot of those forums. You know, I certainly believe in that's, you know, renewable energy and solar, especially with all these federal rebates and the, you know, federal programs coming out to get new jobs and all that. I think that is going to be an amazing, you know, rebirth of what's going on in the United States. I can't say that Biden's going to get it right, because it's going to take more than just this president to keep this train moving forward. In other countries, you know, I have the Elon satellite, you know, Starlink as well, just because I want to be able to take that satellite dish with me so we can get on Lucid Link or whatever when I come over and see my friends in South Africa or wherever I'm headed out, right? So to me, you know, those are kind of interesting things, and it's technology, right? You know, just got my iPhone 13 Max Pro the other day, really excited about that. So technology keeps me going. I look forward more to CES probably than NAB, because I don't have to work CES. I just get to wander and do all the NDA meetings. So I'll definitely be out there, walk on the floor. So I think technology keeps me going. And of course, my family. And by the way, I did end up getting a COVID puppy, because you put me under that category. So, you know, when you start figuring out these are the top 3 things that happened during COVID, I think puppy was like number 3. So we ended up getting. What breed? Training that dog with my wonderful wife, Doreen, is keeps us
What
busy.
breed of puppy?
We actually got somewhat of a rescue. It is her mother is a golden doodle and her father is a labradoodle, and the breed is actually called a double doodle, which sounds like a wonderful marketing term to sell dogs to me. She was 3 months old, and I think there was
double doodles. This thing double doodles all over your carpet.
Yeah. She's a wonderful, you know, hyperallergenic, you know, all of that, and a very smart dog, but keeping us busy. So that's behind the scenes as well. So there you go, Mo. Probably more than one answer there.
It's absolutely great. So
you're the first person from Adobe, by the way, that we've had on that doesn't have a guitar behind them.
Oh, I have an air guitar, just in case someone says I need to have that. So I have it on the ready. So it just depends on what group. So, you know, if we were singing like Patrick, who just did a wonderful job the other day, ready to go. And that's, by the way, that's been sitting there probably for 4 years. I haven't touched it because all my kids are grown. So, you know.
Well, you know, Dave, I was supposed to go to Germany and become Patrick's best friend and live in his house, but now I've changed my mind completely.
He's moving to Maryland.
I'm moving.
First of all, the German team I love everybody at Adobe. My buddies in Germany, they are amazing. That engineering team is incredible. And we look forward to going to Oktoberfest every year. And we're pretty sad that we missed it this year because the Adobe office out in Hamburg and some other locations all come together and get a big table and a big tent at Oktoberfest. And, a beer is never more than about 4 inches away from your hand. So it is a wonderful environment. It is a great group. And if you do get a chance to get out and see Patrick and the rest of the team out there, definitely do that, Mo.
Well, you mentioned Adobe Max a while back. And of course, I'm doing a session on thinking like a colorist, color correction, Premiere Pro. Mo is doing his thing. I got a half hour. Mo gets a full hour. It's not fair. And he's doing an After Effects lab. And so, we're doing this, but what you really need to do, Dave, is have Mo and I come to IBC next year.
Yeah. Well, remind us, we were actually hoping to go to IBC, this year, which is of course going to be in December, which I think is weird to me. It would have been the first week of December, I think IBC was. Is that right? And we've since then pulled out just because of what was going on with NAB and stuff. So we're just looking forward to next April. Let's get things back on track. Hopefully CES in January will be a nice test run and we get whatever the newest variant under control with vaccines and stuff and look forward to that. So yeah, that would be great, to have you guys out there and catch up.
Well, I tell you what, Dave, with remote collaborative workflows, like Neil said, you drill through the earth to get from him to me. And I've seen a lot of the guys saying, we've tested Lucid Link, and the guy's sitting 200 miles away or 300 miles or 400. And that's just, a stone's throw away. The best way to test this sort of thing is from where Neil is sitting and where I'm sitting. We've done that with team projects as well. Yeah. And if you kind of see what can go wrong.
But it works amazing with productions. Team projects is great for small projects, but even on huge projects, as we're seeing some of this on some people doing some Netflix work and other testing out Lucid Link, huge projects using productions, I think is even better.
I do everything I'm a one-man shop here for most of what I do, and yet I do everything within a production because it gives so much incredible flexibility and speed to everything, because I can have all of my B-roll that I've shot, all of my sound library, anything like that. They're all available with media stored in little projects within that major production. And any project I'm in, I can go, I want some B-roll or want some audio sounds or something. And I can just go to this other project, drag and drop it on a sequence. It doesn't duplicate the item in that project.
It's much smarter.
In the other project, it is so slick. It doesn't slow down. It doesn't bog down like you get with these huge single projects. And I don't understand why anybody works in standalone Premiere Pro anymore.
Well, Neil, to your point, just so people kind of think about how to use it, and maybe Mo, you could use it this way as well. These are my 2021 edits. This is 2021 productions, and you start a new one in January. You might carry some stuff over, logos and clips and B-roll and stuff. But now you have, because I've done this with a lot of the, I was the broadcast guy for eons, and still work with a lot of the broadcasters and media and entertainment companies. But they will have an entire season now. And a season is the same thing for the most part as a year, because you're trading a lot of those assets, to your point, right, Neil, where it's just kind of like you can just have it all under one umbrella, and it opens incredibly fast. Watch the videos. Carl Soule on our team did a wonderful job, and some others on just explaining how productions work. Very approachable. These are in like little 5-10 minute videos that you guys can do, and probably make a great session for you to do a deeper dive on productions if you haven't done that already.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sounds like a great idea. Yeah. We could talk. I think we're going to have you come back, because
definitely
we've been going for over an hour here.
We haven't even got to some of the movies he's been involved in. So
we got plenty.
I've just been here too long, I think, guys. That's the problem. All the body's buried, as they say.
I think we're going to get Dave back for part 1, 2, 3, and 4. Really.
Yeah, I think so. This has been great.
Absolutely.
Well, if you want us in stereo, have have Carl Soule and myself out here. You know that.
Yeah, that's what we
I
want to
need a
do.
bigger block for that because Carl and I can keep things moving.
And
good.
Dave knows what I'm
That's good.
talking about when I say turtle.
Yes.
In joke.
Dave- That's an in joke that would take a little bit of explanation, but it's
Yeah.
funny.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
thank you everyone for joining us. We will see you next week.
Yeah. Thanks for having me in the Hangout.
Thank
Have
you.
a nice talking
Absolutely
with you, Dave.
fantastic. Fantastic.